This week's scenario is the Pit 2 from the 2017 Steamroller packet. This scenario does have the Killbox Artifice in effect, and consists of one circular zone which can be controlled by warrior units, warcasters, and warlocks, two rectangular zones which can be controlled by warjacks, warbeasts, battle engines, warcasters, and warlocks, and then objectives which can be destroyed for 1 CP. Victory conditions consist of earning 5 more control points than your opponent, or caster assassination.
Hey everybody, CutThroatCure here. So I decided to bring Borka in this round of the scramble just because I knew that Taodark was bringing Cephalyx and I believed that the Band of Heroes was the best theme list to put into dude spam. I decided that Borka, being one of my favorite casters, would be the best to choose, especially since he has a lot of anti-magic tools. So I brought his two best friends, the Mountain King and Rock. I also was lucky enough to bring the champions. This was before they got their new Sanguine Bond. I also was able to bring a max unit of Fennblades because I was hoping that they would block up a lot of the advance of the Cephalyx army. That way that I could get the pieces that I needed into the zones that I needed. So my major goal with this list was basically to throw the Fennblades as far up as possible and try and block stuff, keeping, his dudes at bay while allowing my Mountain King and Rock to kind of have free reign of the board and possibly get the alpha strike on some of his monstrosities. I must say that I was a little bit disappointed that my champions didn't have Sanguine Bond going into this. Something I can definitely look forward to.
Hey everybody, Taodark here. So we're now in a second round of the scrambles with my opponent being CutThroatCure and his Trollbloods. He's got a Borka list that I'm almost certain he's going to drop in, and in that situation I almost feel like my Cyphon list is a better option versus Exelon. Exelon's not a huge fan when there's an opposing list that has a Gargantuan or Colossal or something like that, just because the model can't be necessarily moved around, nor can the caster be moved around, so the feat doesn't necessarily have a presence to it, nor does TK in many cases. So I went with Cyphon just for some quote-unquote armor crack out of the Cyphon's feet and some of his monstrosity work, and we'll use the Overlords to start contesting. This is before the theme list release, so I don't have anything like machine wraiths or anything like that to contest zones.
So going right into turn 1, I knew the first and foremost thing that I wanted to do was just basically throw my Fennblades as far up as possible. Thankfully, due to pre-measuring, I was able to put my Fennblades up and then kind of align them so that if I needed to, if there was any sort of movement shenanigans, that Cephalyx wasn't going to be able to run past my front line and start messing up some of my stuff that was behind them. This is a common tactic that I do with my Fennblades in basically any list that I play, which is one of the reasons that I include them in so many. I moved the Mountain King up, and I basically figured that in this scenario that with the 2 boxes, I was going to be able to hopefully keep, with me going first, I was hoping to keep with my Fennblades to keep his guys out of the zones so that maybe I could start pulling in a few easy early points. So I made sure to put my dudes right in the middle and then Rock on one side and the Mountain King in the other. And as I said, my goal was that if I felt like I could get a few early points when it came down to it, if I could keep him out of those zones, that it would put a little bit of pressure on. Now, once again, I'm a little bit slower being out of practice, but this is definitely a lot of the stuff that I enjoy playing in lists. So I was able to do, I was able to work a little bit quicker than, say someone who's never played before. My deployment and stuff was pretty basic, and so was my first turn.
Mercenaries turn 1. So going second isn't exactly the scenario that I want to be in against this list nor against this zone. I really would rather have set the tempo Unfortunately, because CutThroatCure has gone first, he's now set the tempo. So I'm going to advance up my army, but in a way where I'm limiting his ability to just alpha strike me the following turn. I advance up the dwarfs on the bottom of the screen. They're going to turn around and get involved with resolve so that their armor is increased. Mainly, I'm looking at them as a contesting element. They are straight across from the champions, and with the champions having Weapon Master, they're going to get a lot of work done. So I'm just going to stack up the armor in hopes that it would be enough to keep them alive. At the top of the screen, I'm going to start outflanking, not the rule, just the actual activity of flanking out around his army, using the Overlords to contest scoring in that zone so that the Mountain King can't just sit in that zone and score. And then the central zone is going to be one where it's just going to constantly be in flux of contesting through just single model elements. One drawback to this, unfortunately, is that he has the ability of using no quarter and just running past the zone, but I think I have enough infantry removal that if he does so, I should be able to still get in the zone to contest.
So I'm not 100% sure what I was doing at the end of Kevin's turn there. I kind of looked like a wacky, waving inflatable arm man. But I know that going into this turn and seeing how Taodark placed his dudes, I was hopeful that I was going to be able to maybe, as I said, complete my initial goal, which was keep his dudes from being able to get into the zones to try and claim some early points, while also being able to maybe put a little bit of threat into his army. So you can see right off the bat that here I am trying to put my champions up there in the corner and just kind of create a barrier so that I can lock out his beasts for the main point so that they're not claiming points. Rock, I wasn't really sure what to do with him at this point. I kind of felt at this stage in the game that I didn't really know where to go with him. And so I just figured up I might as well keep him safe as a last minute or just a backup if I would happen to need it. Sadly, with pre-measuring being sometimes a benefit and sometimes a bane, during Taodark's turn, it was a bane because he was able to find out what my maximum threat range was and then keep his hammer dudes right outside of it. So one of my major focuses when I'm looking at this turn, and you'll definitely notice this while I'm moving my Mountain King, is that, his caster is sitting up on that hill, and he's got all of his monstrosities up there. And my basic idea is if I can lock his monstrosities down by, basically putting a unit up there, and basically force them to get stuck, even with beatback, hopefully they're not going to be able to push back far enough to be able to get into the zone, therefore allowing me to have a lot more board coverage since my unit is a little bit faster. I do know that during this turn, if I remember correctly, I popped my feet, I think. Maybe? I don't remember. I believe I popped my feet, but I'm not 100% sure. I just know that my main goal was to make sure that I got up there and kept them from being able to do a lot of stuff. And I figured if I got a few attacks in there, that wasn't so bad. But my main goal, as I said, was to make sure that I kept his monstrosities back. And even with beatback, if I can keep them from just going a little bit and, sacrificing or losing one, maybe two, maybe three Fennblades, that's not so bad for me. Then came the point of, then I also noticed that if I was able to get the Mountain King up far enough, then I might be able to get a spray into his caster, and be able to possibly put a lower defense onto Taodark's caster, maybe a few points of damage, and, my Mountain King should be relatively safe since I have his monstrosities locked down. And this was my general thinking going into this. So Right now, I'm just putting a few attacks into his monstrosities, which, in the grand scheme of things, may not have been my best choice, just because I wasn't 100% aware that some of his guys get they get focus when they're hit, but I was able to I did have Mosh Pit up at this point, and I was able to knock down his monstrosities, just trying to do whatever I can to make it as hard as possible for them to get work done. You know, make them use their focus doing things that are going to be, in the long term, maybe a little bit pointless. So here you can see that I'm trying to make sure that I get just a little bit of damage into the Warcaster early. I figure any bit of damage is a good benefit, and I don't really have to worry about the Taodark's dudes that are up above the Mountain King, because, you know, him sitting at a higher armor and having so many boxes, I don't really worry about them so much. And since I have the monstrosities locked down, I believe that I'm sitting, you know, in a pretty good position there.
Mercenaries turn 2. So I have an opportunity that's presented itself to me in the fact of the Mountain King is currently control contesting the circular square zone, and the majority of the Trollkin army has been shifted to the right. There's a heavy presence to the right, almost to the point where if the Mountain King's removed, the left-hand zone's completely abandoned, and I'll be able to move into and start turning this game into a game where it's top versus bottom instead of left versus right in its engagement. The problem I run into is I have to remove the Mountain King. There's a lot of things that have engaged into me with the Fennblades being there, and then I've got this block of champions I need to deal with. Now, I've committed my dwarves to just kind of gumming them up and just holding that area. You'll see here that CutThroatCure is doing some movements. He'd forgotten the reposition at the end of his turn for his unit, and since I hadn't actually rolled any dice or committed any resources or made any declarations of movement, I had considered my turn not necessarily started, so I was just like, sure, go ahead, take your repositions, I don't mind. So he actually engaged me even further, but what it's done is it's given me an opportunity now where I can take my spray template and kind of pre-measure out where can I remove pieces. So I've got those Overlords at the top of the screen. I've got another unit that's just slightly embedded within the group. If I can advance them up and I can spray off the Fennblades, because the arcane defense that is currently on the champions still resides on the champions and not on the Fennblades, I can go in, spray off the Fennblades, and then be able to get my 2 monstrosities under feet into his Mountain King. And I'm fairly confident that I can get that. Maybe a couple sprays, put in a little damage here and there, but in actuality I really don't want to damage the Mountain King early, because I don't want to have a scenario where potential spray or something like that causes a whelp to spawn and blocks a charge lane. So there's some activation issues that I need to go through, and I tend to have scenarios where if I need to devote a little bit more time to think about how I want to process through, I start going through activations that aren't as critical, and then just use my mental capacity to run through that and then address the other issues. So I activate the doors, and like I was mentioning earlier, I'm not really looking to do much here with them. I'm not necessarily pressed for this scenario. This is not a portion of the table that I'm really concerned with right now. If I can gum up the champions and prevent them from just going ham through my army, then that's good enough for me. So I go ahead and advance the dwarves in. I have an Overlord unit down there that I turn around and advance in to contest the zone, because he has kind of squeezed himself into that central location. The Overlords that went down flank aren't necessarily a concern for him, because he's like, oh, I'm immune to magic, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm not planning on killing you, but I'm just going to put something in the zone to prevent you from scoring. So between me contesting the bottom zone, I'll have a member of the Overlord's unit go up in the top zone up here, and get some sprays off and stuff like that. I'm not necessarily too terribly concerned about it. So I activate the first Overlord unit, went in, contest the zone. Both zones are contested. One of the Overlords is actually sitting between 2 zones, so he's actually contesting both. So now that I've locked down scenario as any scoring elements can occur in this turn without him basically turning his army around or turning his army sideways to address, the rest of my army can start dealing with what I really want to deal with, which is the fact of I want to take the opportunity of him presenting the Mountain King to me to remove it from the table. If I can swing the attrition battle by removing that big, expensive piece, then I can really start driving the scenario where I'm playing more models than he is, and start going through the game that way through an attritional piece necessarily than me trying to do anything else. So we advance the third Overlord unit over there, and we start doing the sprays to clear things out. And my targeting is very specific because I have some models that I need to remove from around the monstrosity, or I'm sorry, from around the Mountain King, to make sure that I can get in, but I don't want to do any damage to the Mountain King to spawn whelps and block charge lanes. I did get one spray that did clip the Mountain King, and luckily for me, I missed. Yay for happy accidents. And then I turn around and I activate and put my feet up, activate one of my monstrosities to go in, and the monstrosity that I just activated is not. I haven't popped the feet yet. The warder that I put into the zone is only basically went up in there to block rock, to prevent any sort of charge lane, any sort of countermeasure, because after I destroy the Mountain King, I still have to deal with rock, and if rock can come in and just obliterate out my monstrosities, then I'm absolutely screwed in that scenario. So we're using the warders are going in and basically gumming up things, putting them into the tip of zones to make sure that nothing really happens, or that I can turn around and get what I need done to protect my army. So I'm going to apply the feat to all four of my monstrosities, just from a perspective of I want to make sure that I'm gaining the benefit of the offensive element of the feat, where I get the increased strength and the increased speed, so that way I can just advance up, because some of the charge lanes aren't straight, so I'm going to have to actually advance up to swing, which is fine because I can save the focus that are on the wreckers for actually doing damage to the Mountain King. And then I'm going to turn around, and so I think here's where I'm activating Cyphon and using a spray to clear off the whelps that are there, and then he'll feat. I'm also applying the feat to the Wardens because I want to make sure that they're at the highest possible armor value to really gum up or really protect the monstrosities. Yes, the monstrosities will have an armor value; it'll be harder to damage, but if I can really, protect them with the increased armor and protect them by never being engaged, that seems that much better for me. So monstrosity goes in. It takes both of them to do it, which I kind of expected. We get the Mountain King out. All zones are contested. My caster isn't necessarily in any direct threat right now, so I'll pass the turn.
So that was extremely unfortunate. So my main goal was to put the Fennblades up there, as I said, to keep the monstrosities from being able to get through and get work done, believing that my Mountain King was a little bit safer. As you saw, I should have, I think my biggest mistake was I didn't put Arcane Ward onto my Fennblades, which I should have done, because then his magical sprays would have had no effect, and therefore he would not have been able to remove my Fennblades from in front of the monstrosities, therefore, allowing me to keep them locked down. I didn't even think about that, and that was a really good play on my opponent's turn, and because of that, I definitely took a 36-point hit, losing my Mountain King with nothing to show for it. So that was definitely super, super painful. And you can definitely see me during this turn, like, I'm tapping my fingers, and I'm just kind of worried because I need to figure out what to do. I wasn't expecting to be in the position that I am right now. I'm basically realizing that I'm super down on the attrition game at this point, and being able to just control by scenario isn't going to work. So now I need to redirect how I'm going to do this and try and go for an assassination, because I'm not looking good on time, and I'm not looking good on, bodies and damage. So I've got to make sure that every little thing I do counts right now if I'm going to end up bringing out a win, which isn't looking possible at this point, but I've done far crazier. So one of my major focuses as I'm sitting here is, I've got the Hammerfall dudes, the hammer dudes that are right here in front of my champions. I figure, I have a full unit of them. They should be able to get in there, hopefully get some work done with Overtake, and just kind of get through all that. So I'm trying to figure out where I was going. Oh, so right here, I'm just trying to push my dudes in it even farther. I basically figure that if I can get in there and maybe get a hit on... so I have my Fennblade leader up there, and I figure if I can get a hit onto his Warcaster with Mosh Pit up, I'll knock him down. Forgetting that currently with what he has, he can't be knocked down. But I find this out here in a few minutes and go, just figure out that I need to be a little bit more aware of some of the status effects that are currently up. So I figure, hey, what the hell? I might as well get some points of damage into these dudes because I can, and I need to get some work done. So I'm not sure. So I'm putting in the work with my Fennblades, and they're actually, finishing off some of the monstrosities. And I figure every little body that I can take off is super important at this point because I lost the Mountain King. So where was I going? Move around a lot. I realize this. So here I am measuring, because as I said, my major goal right now, I'm having to completely change the way that I'm doing this, and I need to direct my focus into clearing as much room as possible to get to Taodark's caster so that I can possibly assassinate him, because that's the only way I'm going to win at this point. So I figure might as well clear as much room as possible. So here I am just putting my dudes right into his hammer dudes, and I can say one thing, that the champions are just getting work done. They're just clearing dudes. Overtake is really looking nice, and it's working quite well. One thing I did notice, and this is something that I have started to alleviate, is that I need to put more arcs onto my dudes. It's something that I didn't do when I had started playing this, and as I've painted, I just hadn't added them because of the fact that I didn't have any done, and I've started to rectify this by putting arcs in, which would have probably helped me a little bit, because I have this in front of the champions. I have a Fennblade right behind my guys, and I could have better aligned myself to make sure that I could have blocked any charge lanes if people come. So at this point, you see me, I'm activating Rock, and I'm not really using him in the most effective way, but I figure if I can just clear some people out of that area to allow me to get to his caster, that'll be possible. Since my Northkin champions are immune to cold, I decided to blow Rock's breath weapon right into that area, just trying to do whatever damage I can.
Mercenaries, turn 3. So my army got pretty banged up. My dwarves are almost gone. I mean, the Cephalyx leader with them is still around, so I'll be using him more as a contesting element than anything else. I will be ambushing in a unit this turn. My Mindslavers will be ambushing in. Ideally, I was putting them in because I wanted to go after the objective to see if I couldn't destroy out the objective and get a scenario point. But the more I ended up considering it, I just decided they're really going to be kind of in the zone. They'll be near the back of the zone, but because Eyeless Sight doesn't allow me to see through forest, I'm not necessarily going to get the greatest of charge lanes to the objective. It's almost like perfectly hidden by the forest. So I'm just going to kind of advance him up and use them more as again, another contesting piece. He's got his champions back there, so if I don't put anything into that zone, something that's going to cause him to turn around, he could literally just kind of advance that unit backwards and start scoring the scenario. He did not switch the Arcane over to the Fennblades that I thought he would, so I'm going to, again, use those magic sprays to clear out the gumming ups, because I look for an opportunity where Borka is so pushed forward that I believe I have the potential of getting my 2 monstrosities that originally took out the Mountain King onto Borka. Now, one of the monstrosities is seriously banged up. He only has like 4 or 5 boxes on him, if I remember correctly. But the advantage I do have is, of those 4 or 5 boxes, it's a scenario where I have every single functioning factor. He's got a letter in each of those boxes, so I have access to both my armament, my movements, and my brain to keep the focus on him. So the Overlords again advance up, they go into the zone, they spray. I'd love to be able to score in the central zone, but I find that with this scenario, that circular zone is just really impossible. One of the things that I do need to do, though, is if I'm going after Borka, is I need to find a way to lock up his Stumbling Drunk. So the Overlords that originally were in that zone last turn as a contesting element, I'm now just flat out running them. I'm not going for sprays or instigates or anything. I'm merely running them to box them around each other. He's got one of his models on the left-hand side. If I put the Overlords around him as best as I can with their 12-inch move, then I can really kind of box him in so that the Stumbling Drunk won't cause him to leave the melee range of my monstrosities. Now, monstrosities have beatback, so if he ends up pulling off a stumbling, then I could potentially beat back, but that's only going to be on initials, and I won't be able to continually keep doing that. I want to make sure I get multiple hits in him because he has transfers on him. So going through, I end up boxing him in with that. Now, I could have probably used one of the Overlord units at the top to really solidify the box. There is, I believe it's the 6. We determined that there was a sliver of space in the 6 that he could still move in. Everything else, I had boxed him up with my moves. So he has some wiggle room, if you will, in order to get out. So I'm still committed to it, though. Like, even though there's wiggle room, I'm still committed to it. I don't necessarily have anything that's going to knock him down. If I had, I had my Warden or something like that, maybe I could have done a Grand Slam to knock him down that way. But I go through, we have to put a proxy bakes in because Rock is, though a beautiful model, extremely top heavy and causing a lot of conflicts with positioning and stuff like that. So we put that proxy base will be Rock for the rest of this round. And I go through, I clear up some gumming ups and stuff like that. I do manage to pull off a Breath Stealer onto Borka to reduce his defense. Again, knocking him down would be great, but I don't have anything to do that right now, so I'm just going to use Breath Stealer to reduce his defense by virtue of improving the defense. Now, here I'm trying to check to see if I can't get one of the Agitator's bubbles in range, and I'm able to. The problem is that the Trollblood army has done one thing excellently, which is just completely gummed me out of the zone. I can't ever advance. It's like every time I kill something else falls into place, and I just get stuck in the same spot it was last turn. And unfortunately, my Agitators haven't been able to advance up. I had one in range for the Mountain King, but I do not have one in range for the for going after Borka. So it's a scenario where I'm just going to have to do it, quote unquote, au naturel. I don't have a feat to modify it. I don't have anything like that. So I really need to get both wreckers into it. I do have Onslaught available to me, and I did cast that. Cyphon did cast Onslaught, so that way I can charge and get the Pathfinder if that Forest ends up becoming an issue. Actually, I think more I think about it, more I think I didn't go for that because we came to the conclusion that I can't charge through the forest and still get reach to Borka through the troll that's standing next to him. A medium base being smaller than 2 inches, I thought I could get the reach, but he's not exactly perfectly in base to base. So I ended up sending a monstrosity in, and the very first one that goes in just gets clobbered by Rock on a free strike. So I don't get that monstrosity, unfortunately. I do get the second one in, and the second one just starts going to town, smashing Borka with the little flails that he has. The 2 initials end up doing a decent amount of work. I get another bot attack I put into him, to get, again, some more work put into him. But I think he ends up transferring one of them off, and then we end up rolling the very last attack that he pulls off. We end up rolling the damage, or we end up doing the hit. He does Stumbling Drunk out of range, and then because I had another focus on him and I knew I wasn't going to be able to buy an attack next turn, I just said screw it, and I opted to boost the damage on the last one. So I ended up moving some contesting pieces, and what was supposed to be an assassination turn ends up falling flat on its face.
So if I had $1 every time I was saved by Stumbling Drunk, I'd have like $15 or $20 at this point. Borka's, ability comes into effect again and saves the day. So at this point, I am literally running on seconds, like less than a minute, to finish this game. And I am freaking out because I'm having a really hard time figuring out everything. So you see me trying to move my dudes just to make sure that, I'm trying to see who can get in there and do that little bit of damage to Taodark's caster and try and end this. But due to the monstrosity getting so close to Borka and moving up a little bit, I actually realized that it's a potential where you see that template right there that I might be able to get Rock into the zone and attack Exelon. So at this point, this is actually really important. I'm looking, I don't even have enough time to pass the clock even if I wanted to. So I have to go all in. So at this point, we're sitting here and I'm rolling dice, and it actually comes down to the fact that during my last roll here, as I'm attacking his Warcaster, I'm able to get the hit, and as I'm rolling the damage, the clock actually times out, and I was able to roll out the damage since you can finish whatever you're in the middle of, and it was just enough to finish and kill Taodark's caster, somehow awarding me the win. So that's bonkers. I don't even know what to say.
So for my afterthoughts, it ends up becoming a situation where there's a couple things that I really had the game playing out for me. I set the attrition to the point, or I set my army to flank around him so that he didn't necessarily get any major presence on the table. I was always able to contest him every turn for scenario, and the removal of the Mountain King was totally worth the feat. I ended up trading up well with the feat and trading a warder to protect the monstrosities in the following turn. My flaw in this game and where it ended up costing me was twofold. One is being more aware of the presence of the clock. In his final turn, he was down to minutes, and had I, instead of going for the assassination, recognized that the clock was so low, I could have easily just ran Cyphon away. Just take assassination on the table. If you can't score scenario, you can't kill my caster, and you're down on minutes on your clock, then I just win the game by clock. I didn't recognize that, and it ended up costing me the game, obviously, you saw. The other issue, I think, where I fell flat on my face is I went after Borka, when in actuality my target should have been Rock. I should have gone in, still sprayed out those infantry, still done that. But if I had gone in and just killed out Rock, then I would have had two wreckers and two wreckers, and the champions probably would have got freed up next turn, and they would have been a problem. But I feel like I just continue weighing that attritional weight, where it's like I've dealt with the champions. I can heal up the wrecker a little bit. Maybe I feed the wrecker the broken up the champions the broken up wrecker, and then hold the other wrecker in reserve, and then he goes in and just beats on the wreckers. There's a lot of things that I probably could have done better. It's one of my character flaws, and I have yet to ever really figure out how to resolve it, is that if there is even a chance of a scenario of an assassination, I always seem to go for it, when the better choice would be to just calmly wait. Wait for the clock to run out, wait for the attrition to swing further in my favor. Don't go after the assassination just because there's a 40% chance that it's there, or 30% chance that it's there, when the other ways of winning the game, attrition or scenario, are a better option. So more room for me to improve as a player. And hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks, and enjoy your week.